Nice. So once again, you kind of liken this to like a Godfather type tale. Obviously, the visual style is not very classic Italian. So how does that kind of come together?
Well, I like anime. I'll be honest. If you can't tell,
My daughter loves all of your work, but your artwork, by the way.
oh well, tell her I said thank you. I'm so happy she does. Um, it's also a cost thing. So, and for people who may be watching this and don't know, different art styles have a different price tag on them. And at least in my experience and from my small journey that I've taken so far, I have come to know that different art styles have a different price tag. Some artists will bill you, let's say it's like $300 a page, no matter the art style. If they can do it, it's $300 a page, no matter what art style you choose. Others are like, okay, for this art style, it's this much. For this art style, it's this much. But again, in my experience, different art styles, different price tag. And this particular art style was one that I could afford. It's one that to me looks absolutely gorgeous, and it's got that anime style to it. But it's also kind of got those, I don't know the art terms, the harder color palette, and by that I mean, it's not this bright and cheery, super neon colors that you see in some animes. The colors are more grounded. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for here. So, and that's kind of what I wanted for a darker tale. I didn't want it to, have these beautiful, springtime colors, and then you got people having their intestines torn out and their spines ripped out through their, mouth. And I don't want that to, with pretty colors. That's it's kind of a mix that doesn't look, visually like I didn't expect that from this color palette. It's weird.
Fun. I'm excited to read the book because when you talk about it, there's a little bit of like, I don't know. Did you ever watch the it's Comedy Central show Ugly Americans?
No, I didn't.
It was a weird show. It involved like a whole basically an alternate dimension version of New York City where you had like monsters living amongst people and like there was like a whole class of demons from hell that like ran companies and stuff. And it's like yeah, this what is this? The main character was dating a demon, and then like her ex boyfriend was a demon, was always hanging around. Like it just made for like an entertaining narrative,
Yeah, it sounds like it.
but it also meant that there was like a lot of hyper gore going on around
Mm,
like the city and stuff. Like as people used to get spines ripped out of them and whatnot.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there's just like elements of those things like that that to me are fun, funny, whatever. I imagine are going to be part of the story.
Yeah, and it's not so one thing that I told on the Drink with Crazy show with Royce is it's going to get to berserk levels of gore and just uncomfortability as far as like reading it, watching it, seeing it. And I said on there that I gave the studio a little bit of a teaser of what happens in the future issues, and they said that the artist might not be comfortable drawing some of those scenes because they're pretty graphic. And so I may have to change up how I do certain scenes. And I also want people to know that, and I should have said this earlier, but I didn't. So I'm saying it now, of course. It's You're not going to be thrown into a scene that is, gory or sexual in nature or whatever without some sort of warning. Like you're not going to turn the page and it's just suddenly there. I'm going to lead up to it gradually. So the first couple issues are going to get it gets gorier as the story goes on. The first couple issues are not going to be as bad as some of the later issues. The later issues get pretty up there in terms of how how hard some of the scenes are to read and look at, and that's purposeful. Because again, I don't want to just throw you right in the thick of it in the first few issues.
Well, I mean, you look at any of those old mob movies, they always start with talking. It's when talking doesn't go anywhere that the stuff starts happening and horse heads end up in the bed.
Yeah, you gotta, and I am a fledgling author. I'm learning as I go. One of the feedback I heard the most so far from Underworld Done number one is it's kind of wordy when Clavius is talking in the beginning, and the reason for that is I'm trying to set him up as a schemer. Someone who knows, is like 10 steps ahead of somebody already, and it always annoys me in stories, whether it be books, anime, comics, when I don't think someone has been set up as a schemer, and somehow with that explanation, they already know what their opponent's going to do. Well, how do you know that? You haven't been set up as the schemer type of character. You haven't been set up as someone who does any plotting. You just know because you're the main character. And then the other thing too, and I'm glad that you brought it up, is yeah, when you watch those mob movies, the theme typically is, hey, we're gonna talk a lot before anything really happens. We have to, whether it's we have to get permission from the heads of the five families or whatever or whatnot. There's a lot of talking that's involved before any real action happens.
Goodfellas is dialogue, lots and lots of dialogue.
But the other thing too is I do try to throw some action in there. So like at the end of Underworld Dawn number one, you see Ellie take on one of the Kepo regimes of the Harkoni family. So you get some action there. And then you of course see if you're kind of in Chessa go and take over a train station. So there's action in it. I try to make sure people are entertained. Um, and honestly, if I had the money, I would make those action scenes, you know, drag out a little bit. And I don't mean drag out in a negative way. I mean like I'd make there be more substance to those action scenes, I should say. But when you get that many pages into a comic, although I guess technically it's a graphic novel because it's more than 25 pages, um, it it gets expensive. Once you reach that 25 30 page mark, it starts to get up there in cost, and it was already expensive. So I was like, okay, I want there to be action scenes, but I have to rein in the cost a little bit because I'm completely funding this on my own, really. So it's not like I'm not being published by anyone. I don't have any like nobody from my family or anything like that's helping. It's all me. And I don't say that in a pessimistic way. I say that so people understand. Yeah, this is all coming out of my pocket. And if people watching this say, well, the action scenes were kind of short. Well, there's a reason. It costs money.
So it let people know, go out, purchase your copy of it, and maybe you'll get better and more action scenes in the next book.
Yes, I would love to put more pages for the action scenes that I decide to have. So, yeah, please do go support. Good news. Underworld Dawn campaign has reached 100% funding, so it's 100% there. It just reached its goal last night.
Now let's kind of switch gears here, and this is your first time doing a book, and so I imagine it's no surprise when it's been a bit of a learning experience. What are some of the big takeaways that you've kind of really pulled from going down this path?
Um, I have to go with the monetary aspect of it. So, and this is something that I would suggest anybody who is an author who is doing their comic or who wants to start really get your budget nailed down and then double it because that's what happened to me. I had the budget, I got the quote from the artist and everything. I'm like, okay, here's their quote, here's my budget, here's what we're going to do. It ended up being double that. And it ended up being double that because some artists charge for alterations. Some artists, have a certain, panel count that they'll do per page. Thankfully, I've been blessed with my art studio. They've been wonderful to work with. But still the cost, kind of doubled. And for me, it doubled because not because of the panels, not because of the alterations, but because I initially Underworld Done number one was only going to be about 25 or 30 pages. But the head of the studio, and this is why the studio is so good to work with, is he came to me and said, "Hey, we really enjoy working on your project. We like your story a lot, actually. We think that you should, increase the page size." And I know some people are going to say, well, of course the artist is going to say that because they want more money. But I genuinely believe that the head of the studio came to me because he cared about the story and he wanted to work with me more and get more out. And he was even like, hey, I know that this is a lot of money. So if you want to, end up, doing payments instead of, one huge sum, I'll do that. So we met in the middle. I said, "Hey, I will pay you half now, and then I'll pay you the other half later." So that to me is that's how you know, I think, when you've got a really good studio who cares about your story, is when they come to you and they want to do more and they're willing to accept a pretty hefty payment later if as long as you split it up. And then secondly, don't get ahead of yourself. So I was so excited. I would do promotional material. I did holiday posters. I did I I think they call them like animatics. I don't know the right word for it, but it's the one where I inside the campaign page. It's like it's a song, and you have some sketches drawn out to kind of still animate the song, like with still animation with some fluid animation, and that was a lot of money. So, and but don't get ahead of yourself. I mean, don't spend so much money on promo material and all this other stuff because you want to draw in a crowd if you have a small audience like I do. And I don't want people to think I'm being pessimistic or negative in any way. I'm just coming at this with a monetary aspect in that I know, you know, this stuff is expensive, as I've said, and I don't want people to spend all this money on their comic and then spend a ton more on promo material and they don't get the return on it that they expected.